Hello everyone, this is the third chapter of the Simple Motion Graphics series. In this video, we are going to create this kind of motion graphics with the geometry nodes. So let's get started. So first we're going to create our host object and let's call this. So let's add the geometry nodes modifier and let me delete this, okay, because we don't need the host geometry. So first we're going to create the cube. So we have this cube. So we're going to increase its scale so that we have a rectangular shape. So that basically it should fit the camera. So let me move the camera. So let me hide the camera. We have this base cube and next we're going to create the holes. Okay. So we're going to create the grid. So we have this grid. So let me combine this with this. So we're going to increase its scale around 4. And next we need to transform this grid so that it align with the upper surface of this cube. Okay, so we're going to add the bounding box of this cube. So we have this, and in this case we need the maximum value. So we're going to add the multiply node so that we can only get the z component or the height of this cube. So let's multiply this by 1. So we have only the z component, we can plug that into this. So now our grid is aligned with the upper surface of this cube. So this is the cube and this is the grid. Okay. And next we're going to add the instance node, instance on points. Here we're going to add the spheres. So let me combine this with the cube so that we can see that. So we're going to add the sphere node, UV sphere. We have this, and we're going to also make this shade smooth, something like this. And here I'm going to increase its segment to 64 and rings to 32. So we have really high res spheres. And next we're going to add the value node so that we can control its radius. In this case, we're going to use the radius around 0.15. Okay, and let's increase the vertices of this grid. Yeah, something like that. And next we're going to realize this because we need the real geometry, not the instances, to create those holes inside this cube. So we're going to add the mesh boolean node. So let me disconnect this. We're going to connect this to the upper socket and this to the lower socket, and let's connect this to the geometry. In this case we can switch that to manifold. That is fast and also provide a accurate boolean for the manifold geometry. And in this case our cube and all these spheres are manifold. Okay, so we have these holes in the cube. Keep that in mind. This node is really important to shade smooth these spheres before the mesh boolean. If I don't do this, see, we have this kind of problem for the shading. So we need to shade smooth these. Okay, and next we can add the bake node and we can bake this because this will not change with the time. So we can bake this. So now it is really fast. So we don't need to recalculate everything. We can delete the bake if we want to change something here, and then we can rebake that. Okay, so we have this cube with the holes, and next we're going to create the hemispheres inside these holes. Okay, so let's duplicate this setup. Okay, and also we need to duplicate this one. So let me disconnect this and plug this into this, and then we can add the join geometry node and we can join this to this. See, we have these spheres, and next we're going to slightly decrease the radius of this sphere so that we have some gap between this sphere and the surface of this hole. So let's add the math node, change that to subtract, and we're going to subtract a small value 0.0025. See, we have some gap here. Okay, and next we're going to convert this sphere into a hemisphere. Okay, so we're going to use the mesh boolean node. Okay, change that to manifold, And here we're going to use the cube. So we have this cube, and let me also add the transform geometry node because we need to move this cube up in the z-axis. So we have this sphere and this is our cube. If we plug this into this, so our sphere is gone. So basically we have to move this cube around 0.5 in the z-axis, something like this, so that it stay at the top of this ground plane. So now we have this hemisphere. Okay, so now if we see that, so we have all these hemispheres inside these holes. Okay, and now we can play with this rotation. We're going to animate this rotation based on the noise. So let's add the combine xyz node. Okay, so we have this, and next we're going to add the multiply node so that we can control the overall magnitude for the rotation. And then we're going to add the noise texture, change that to 2D, and here we're going to use scale around 0.35 and also make the details 0, and also uncheck this option, that is normalize, because we want the value from -1 to +1. And here we're going to add the map range node. Okay, so our initial value of this noise is from -1 to +1, and we can map that to around -pi to +pi. Now with this multiply node, we can control the magnitude of this rotation. Maybe something like this. And then we can add the position node and we can animate its position. See, we have this. And if we view from the top and we want to offset this noise along the x-axis, see, something like that. So we're going to add the xyz combine node, and then we're going to add the multiply node to control the speed, and here we're going to add the time frame. So let's type here -0.025. This is really slow, maybe -0.05. Yeah, nice. So next we're going to add the mask based on the text so that we can add a different color to these spheres. Okay, so let's add the store named attribute node, change that to instances, and let's call this color mask. So here we're going to create the string to curve node, create the text. So let's type X here. Then we need to realize this because these are the instances. Okay, and after that we're going to fill this. So we have something like this. So let's first make this at the center, and then we can increase its scale maybe around this. Okay, after that we can add the proximity node, and then we can add the less than node, and based on that we can drive the mask. So let's see this, plug this into this, change that to instance. So see, it is not working. The reason for is that our axis lies at the world center, and these instances are basically at the top of this cube. So we need to move this text so that it align with these instances. So we can duplicate this node, okay, the transform geometry, and we can use this output to move this text so that it align with the surface of the cube. Okay, so now we have this, and now if we increase this value, see, we have this mask, and I think we should increase the size of this letter, something like this. And you can also add another transform node. So we have this mask, we can add that to this. So now our text mask is completed. Next we're going to add the material. Add the set material node. Okay, and also create another one and add that here. And next we're going to create two materials. One is for the grid, or let's call this cube, and the second one is for the sphere. So let's add that here, that is cube, and this is for the sphere. So let's go to the shading. For the cube, we're going to add a small amount of subsurface around 0.25, okay. And then for the sphere, so we're going to add the attribute node. So let's bring our mask, the color mask. So that was on the instance domain. So we have this. Then we can add the mix color node, change that to mix, plug this to the vector, and here we can define the color. So make this around 0.925 so that we have some room for the white if we want to edit that later, okay, for the color grading. And here let's make this around this, and I'm going to use this orange color, something like this, okay. Let's plug this into this, and here as well we're going to use the subsurface, and for this we're going to use around 0.75. So let's switch that to cycles, change that to GPU, and also enable the denoise. So we have something like this, and let's switch off the HDR lighting because we're going to use our own lights. So first we're going to add the sun. So let's rotate this, something like this. Put that here, and let's rotate this like this. And here we're going to increase its strength and also this angle around 60 so that we have soft shadow. So let me move this slightly up and move this down. So let's increase its strength maybe around 10. Yeah. Then we can duplicate this and we can light this from this side so that we don't have that harsh shadow. And for this we're going to use a lower strength, maybe around 3. So this is without the second lamp and this is with the second lamp. So if we run this, see our these spheres are moving. Okay. So this is how you can easily create amazing motion graphics with the geometry nodes. This is it. I hope you learned something from this video. You can get the project file, pre-access the other chapters from my Patreon page. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Happy noding. Bye.